Enes Kanter, or I guess I should now say Enes Kanter Freedom, he recently underwent a name change. As of November 29th of 2021, this gentleman became an American citizen. And in doing so, it also seems like he became an American exceptionalist. What I'm going to do is play for you a clip of him going on Tucker Carlson's show and essentially telling the American people to flat out sit down and shut up and stop criticizing your own country because other people elsewhere have it worse than you do. Take a look at his remarks, and then I'm going to totally rip it to shreds.
To be here as you clearly are. How have your teammates responded? Do you think they're as grateful to be Americans as you are?
I mean, my teammates actually, were really happy for me because they knew the struggle that I had the last, 6 years. It was a funny joke in the beginning because they were calling me Mr. Freedom, and now it became a reality. But I think my teammates were like the one that was my brothers. It was just so amazing because their support gave me so much hope and motivation to fight for what's right. So I definitely give a lot of credit to my teammates.
It seems like people who move here from countries that are not free appreciate the freedoms here much more than a lot of us who grew up with those freedoms. Have you noticed that?
I feel like I'm going to just say this, and I'm going to be honest. People should feel really blessed and lucky to be in be in America because they love to criticize it, but when you live a country like Turkey or China or somewhere else, you will appreciate the freedoms you have here.
Yes, that is exactly.
So I feel like they should just, please, they should just keep their mouth shut and stop criticizing the greatest nation in the world, and they should focus on, their freedoms and their human rights and their democracy. So America gave me everything I have. So I definitely appreciate the United States of America.
That was absolutely outstanding. And, this just plays into that typical right-wing trope that if you have anything bad, it doesn't matter what it is, if you want to criticize America in any sense, then you, by definition, hate the country, you should leave, you should be deported, and you're just anti-America. You're just an anti-American. That's the right trope that they like to trot out, when you're critical of the country. And that's essentially what Tucker Carlson was trying to promote here. So I love his questions. People from other countries, they seem to appreciate the freedoms much more than the natives do. And then this guy responds, extremely gullible here. Americans should feel blessed and lucky to live in America. And I really love this remark right here. He says, I feel like they should just keep their mouth shut and stop criticizing the greatest nation in the world. And they should focus on their freedoms and their human rights and democracy. I'm not even going to touch the greatest nation in the world remark because I'll stay there for some time. But let's look at this contradiction. And this one sentence, the contradiction. So shut up, keep your mouth shut, and don't criticize. But at the same time, you should focus on your freedoms, your human rights, and your democracy. It seems like, Mr. Kanter, in order to do that, we have to open our mouths and speak and be loud about it. Why? Because here in this country, our freedoms, our human rights, and our democracy is actually under severe assault, sir. I'm not sure if you've ever noticed it, but it is. In terms of our individual freedoms, have you ever heard of the Patriot Act? Did you know that NSA spying gets increased under every administration? Edward Snowden is a hero for letting us know that our government is violating our Fourth Amendment rights. What's going on here? Look, man, this is a very slippery slope, this American exceptionalism thing. And I'm going to go down and I'm going to expose these contradictions. So we shouldn't criticize America. Did you know that among the developed countries, America is the only country without a national healthcare service? Did you know that Americans pay the most for healthcare out of the rich countries in the world? And did you know they also receive mediocre care among the worst care among the rich countries? Did you know that we also pay the most for drugs because Medicare doesn't negotiate for low drug prices, so the pharmaceutical industries get to price gouge Americans, and that's where they make their profits here in the U.S.? We can't criticize America for that, and that's a willing decision that our leaders are making. Did you know that Joe Biden and the current administration are protecting big pharma profits by not trying to, end this patent protection that we have on the COVID-19 vaccine, so people in less developed countries can't acquire what's necessary to make the vaccine because they get sued to hell and back by big pharma, and so populations elsewhere can't get the vaccine, so they have the large possibility of getting COVID and dying from it. We can't criticize America for doing that, for currently aiding in that to be a possibility that's happening right now. We just ended a 20-year occupation of Afghanistan that essentially consisted of 2 decades of a bombing campaign in which we exterminated the population in that area, killed hundreds of thousands of people, most of them civilians, I might add. You claim to care about freedom a lot, Mr. Kanter. What about the freedom of the Afghans? We can't criticize America for their treatment of the Afghanistan people. What about Iraq? We invaded a country that didn't attack us and we're still there. We're causing what's known as terror in these regions of the world. We can't criticize America for that. What about bombing Syria, occupying Syria? What about Joe Biden bombing Somalia? What about us actively aiding and abetting a genocide in Yemen as Saudi Arabia, our biggest ally, conducts it? We can't criticize America for that. We can't criticize America for taking away the freedoms of people in other regions of the world as you care to champion freedom. What about the freedom of the Iraqis? What about the freedom of the Yemenis? What, it only applies to certain individuals? This same guy has been a huge critic of China because apparently China has been so nice to the Uyghur population over there. And look, I don't know everything there is to know about that. I need to do further research. But upon what I do know, it does seem that the Uyghurs, as they're called over there, aren't being treated fairly. But America is in no position to berate them and criticize them. Look at what we're doing. But, oh, my bad. We can't criticize America. You know what's funny? You know who the biggest critics of America are? Politicians. Politicians are the biggest criticizers of America. You ever notice how whenever they're trying to get elected, this, that, and the third is wrong with the country? Donald Trump is the biggest example. When he was running, his entire shtick was make America great again. That, by definition, implies that America isn't great. That, by definition, is a critique. He had a long slew of things that he went through when he was running that he said he was going to fix. Now, needless to say, he didn't do any of that. But he critiqued America. He had a lot to say, and he won the presidency. Why? Because a lot of people agreed with him. This is no utopia, Mr. Kanter. What the fuck is this guy even talking about? I have absolutely no clue. Guess who has the highest incarceration population among any nation? America. Guess who incarcerates the most amount of young people? America. What, we can't criticize that? The fact that half of the people in our jail system currently, in our prison system currently, are in there for petty crimes, nonviolent crimes. The fact that we have Guantanamo Bay still open, and we know the atrocities committed there, the torture, we can't criticize that. I mean, this is a slippery slope, man. Very slippery slope. I'm going to use a crude example here. Please bear with me. The issue of slavery. Did you know that some slaves back in the day, they actually weren't treated all that bad? There were actually some slave masters, however many few there were, that treated their slaves relatively nicely. They had decent, they paid them decently. They had decent living conditions. Does that mean that we shouldn't have abolished slavery because some of them lived better than others? No, because slavery by definition is wrong. You can't have another human being in bondage. You can't own another human being. That, by definition, doesn't make them a human being. That's what you're saying when you advocate for those types of things. I mean, the list goes on. I mean, this is what the powerful in the quote-unquote elite would like. They would like for you to sit down. They would like for you to shut up and not criticize anything so they can continue rigging the system as they're currently doing. What does Mr. Kanter think about the fact that half of workers in this country make $30,000 or less? What does Mr. Kanter think about the fact that corporations and the rich are avoiding paying taxes and further fueling the wealth inequality in this country? And they're concentrating this mass amount of wealth in such few hands. And with that wealth, they bought the political system. And lobbyists get the right half of the legislation that gets produced in this country. That's not democracy. That's not freedom. And let's talk about freedom very briefly. Freedom, to me, in my honest opinion, is when your basic necessities are guaranteed to you. You are never truly free in any given society until your basic needs are met. That being you have health care, that being you have a job, that being that job pays you a wage that you can provide for yourself subsistence and prosperity, not only for you, but for your family. 30 million people in this country are without health care right now. Does Mr. Kanter consider those people free? I just looked it up. According to Google, his salary is $17 million. He's not struggling financially. He's free, at least in that sense. I mean, look, I don't want to come down too hard on this guy because, look, I genuinely think, especially from watching him right there, he's just, he's simply uneducated on these issues. He doesn't know the ins and outs, the intricacies of what's going on. But my response would be is to find out. Look, I've been an American citizen my entire life. I was born here. I've lived here my entire life. America is all I know. I've never even been outside of the country before. I plan to do so. I want to travel the world and do so extensively. Who doesn't? But all I know is America. Okay? But if I were to flee some country of oppressive rule and come to a place like America where conditions are better, especially when I'm an NBA player that's making millions of dollars a year, what I would at the very least try to do is understand and talk to and form bonds and relationships with the people that are criticizing this place that I think is so much better than the place that I previously came from. Why? What's their frustration? What's their ire? Where does it stem from? What are they dealing with? Who's doing it to them? I would try to figure this stuff out. He needs to figure this stuff out because when you say things like this, especially in a country like America, it'll get you hated quick. It'll get you hated very, very quick. You don't do that because the pain here is real. The anguish here is real. And don't try and minimize it because people elsewhere are going through something different and therefore it's worse. And therefore you think that Americans don't have a claim to fame in terms of talking about their oppression. Don't do that at all. And I want to end with this. And look, I don't mean a whole lot by this, but I want to say it because there's a little grain of truth here. If you come across this video, you may or may not, I don't know. And most likely you're an American. You've been living in America your entire life, as I have, as I stated earlier. How do you feel about a person that wasn't born here? Not that it matters. They literally became an American citizen 2.3 seconds ago. And they're telling you, who has experienced this country their entire life, has been an American their entire life, how to act, how to react, what to say, what not to say, whether or not you can criticize your own country. How do you take that? You feel disrespected, don't you? You don't like it, do you? You don't like being told what to do and what not to do. I don't. Just a thought. Like I said, I don't mean much by that, but it's just a thought. Also, this guy was actually, I believe he grew up in Turkey, but he was born in Switzerland. When we rank countries, developed countries in their healthcare systems, the U.S. is always at the bottom of the list. But guess who is always towards the top of the list? Switzerland. The irony in that. But anyway, I want to talk about this. Look, bro, just because people in other places of the world, and I made a video about this a while back because Bill Maher had some asinine remarks, essentially uttering this same kind of nonsense that Americans don't have any right to complain or criticize their nation because people elsewhere are going through a much more deeper struggle or whatever. Look, man, that kind of thinking is flawed, and there is nothing wrong for arguing for better in any given society. Every society needs its critiquers. That makes for a healthy one. If everybody just went along to get along, conditions wouldn't improve. Well, how do you think we got the 8-hour workday? Because people were fed up working 14 hours a day, and they stood up and they criticized and they argued for better and they received it. The same thing goes for every other issue that we've progressed on. And so if you stop and if you listen to this fool and you sit down and you shut up, then we won't see any progression.